they're classed as heavy metal, but not in the same heavy metal as the same vein as Metallica or Anthrax or Megadeth or something like those type of bands. They've got a bit more. They're a bit more on the hard rock side, but they're still classed as heavy metal. Now, Iron Maiden, they were formed in England and formed in 1975, so they've been around a very, very long time. And they've released 17 studio albums and countless live albums and compilation albums, best of albums. They've sold over 100 million albums worldwide, and they're a phenomenal band. They have written some of the most classic, iconic heavy metal, hard rock songs. Now, what I'm doing, I'm actually going to go for this album here. It's called The X Factor. It's their 10th album, and it was released in 1995. Now, with this album, it doesn't have the original lead singer Bruce Dickinson, as we all know. Well, as everyone would know, Iron Maiden fans would know. He actually left. He left around 1993 or so to pursue a solo career. He's back with the band now, but he was out of the picture for a few years, concentrating on his solo career. Now, the lead singer of this is called Blaze Bayley. Now, I'll just introduce the band to you while I'm talking about. There's a picture of the band there, looking very dark and a bit morbid. But we'll go through them We'll go through the band members individually. Okay, we've got Steve Harris there, who's the bass guitarist. Blaze Bayley, who joined Iron Maiden for this album, 1995, lead singer. Let's see. Dave Murray, guitar player, who's been in the band since day one, 1975. He's still there today, so he's been there a very long time. Yannick Gers, guitarist. Yannick actually joined the band in 1990. And Nico McBrain, drums. Yeah, so Blaze Bayley joined did this album. Now, this is a really hard album to review. It's not, I'll be honest with you, it's not my favourite Iron Maiden album. It's not. The only reason I've got it is because, well, it's Iron Maiden, even though it's not got Bruce Dickinson. Now, the Bruce Dickinson and Blaze Bayley are two different, there's Blaze there, are two different singers. Bruce has got a very powerful voice, and he can get up to the high notes. Well, maybe not as much as he used to be able to do because he's getting on his age, but Bruce is just a powerhouse of a singer. Now, Blaze is he's got a very low register singing. I've read a lot of reviews and read a lot of comments, and a lot of people didn't particularly like his singing for Iron Maiden. Now, it's one of those things you either take or leave. Personally, I prefer Bruce Dickinson over Blaze. But each their own. So in regards to this album, compared to other Iron Maiden albums, this is a very dark album. I know Iron Maiden, they explore dark themes in their songs, but the overall sound of this album is dark and it just plods along. It doesn't have much life to it compared to other Maiden albums. And look, I did read that Steve Harris, the bass player, he was actually going through there he is there. He was going through a divorce with his ex-wife, so that sort of came through in the music. He's obviously he wasn't on top of the world, going through a divorce. And also 1995, this was released in, when grunge was still around, the grunge music scene was still around, but it was also starting into a new type of heavy metal type music. But look, the Iron Maiden fans have stuck with these guys, from day one through this phase of having a different lead singer in to right now. So they're very loyal Iron Maiden fans. As I said, in regards to this album, there just seems to be a lack of energy. It just seems to plod along. There's no spark, as I said before. There's no life to it. I mean, there are some songs that rock, that get your foot tapping a bit, but nothing to rave about. Now, they did release 2 singles off this album called Man on the Edge, and that was actually based on a movie by the same name, which featured Michael Douglas in it. I've seen the movie; it's quite good. Also, the other single was called Lord of the Flies, which was based on the classic book of the same name, Lord of the Flies. I'll just read the songs out for you. We've got Sign of the Cross, Lord of the Flies, Man on the Edge, Fortunes of War, Look for the Truth, The Aftermath, Judgment of Heaven, Blood on the World's Hands, The Edge of Darkness, 2 a.m, and The Unbeliever. Now, in regards to how there's a picture of the whole band there. In regards to this album, how it did in the charts, compared to all their previous albums, this was probably their least popular, their lowest. In Australia here, it reached number 64. In the UK, it reached number 8, that's still very good. Obviously, they did well because they're from England, so... Now, on the US Billboard 200 charts, 147. Now, that's, I don't think any Iron Maiden album has hit that peak. And 147 out of 200, it's not the best, especially for Iron Maiden. But now, in regards to album sales in Europe, England, they did reach a silver certification of albums sold of 60,000 copies sold, so it's something, but as I said, nothing compared to their previous work. Look, this is an album that I rarely listen to. I'll be honest with you, I rarely listen to this album. It's not as if I hate it. I don't hate it, but I'm not over the moon about it either. Look, and the only favourite song from this album is called Man on the Edge. It's got lots of life in it. It's bursting of energy, the classic Iron Maiden energy that comes through their songs. And it's got the really driving, galloping sound that Iron Maiden are renowned for. But that's my only favourite song, I'm sorry to say, off this album. Look, I'm glad I've got this in my collection of Iron Maiden albums. As I said, they've released 17 studio albums and I've got all of them. So I'm glad I got this in my collection. But I want to say something in regards to Blaze joining this band. Now, I have the utmost respect for him because it would have been extremely hard coming into a band which had such an iconic lead singer as Bruce was, before he went to do his solo career, taking over his position and being the lead singer of such an iconic, worldwide popular band of Iron Maiden, it would have been extremely hard. And I take my hat off to him for having a go, because I hate to say this, but the odds were against him. I'm not saying that he did a poor job. I'm not saying that at all, but it's just totally two different contrasting singers, Blaze and Bruce Dickinson. The utmost respect for him, because it would have been tough. It would have been really tough. As I said before, Iron Maiden fans are very loyal, and I know a lot of them were really upset when Bruce Dickinson left. As I said, he's back in the band. He came back in the band in around 2000, year 2000. And since then, the band have been just getting better and better. So, look, at least he had a go. That's the main thing. He had a go. And at least it's on his resume now, on his musical resume, that I was the lead singer of Iron Maiden for a few years. So he did do another album after this, and I will review that album. In regards to this album, it doesn't set the world on fire for me, not at all. I'm not saying it's a bad album, but I'm not saying it's a fantastic album. I give this 6 out of 10. 6 out of 10. Just doesn't have that life, that spark as Iron Maiden usually do. That's just my opinion. I've heard some people rave about this album. Even Iron Maiden fans saying this is some of their best work. Right? It's fantastic. For me personally, it doesn't do a lot for me. But Iron Maiden, one great band, and I've got another 16 albums of theirs, so I'll go into more detail in regards to each album. But yeah, Iron Maiden, The X Factor, released in 1995. Okay album. Yeah. Just passes. But yeah, so thank you very much. I hope everyone's doing well, and thank you for your ongoing support, and I'll see you next time with another album review. Take care, everyone. Bye.